Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My first question, which I think should be everybody's first question, is what is the budget for this proposed office of the National Cyber Director? And the second part of that question is, in addition to the 75 employees that are anticipated, what percent of the money is going to go to the contractors? And anybody can answer that question if there's an answer to it.
Well, Mr. Massie, Mr. Jamil Jaffer, we don't know what the budget is. There's no authorization for appropriations in the bill, as far as I could tell, and we don't know what the committees will give it. That being said, the 75 FTE that are in there are a significant number. There's also authority to bring billets in from other parts of the government, as well as to hire outside experts and the like. And so this number 75 could actually grow beyond that. Now, to be fair, the legislation does just say up to 75 for the full-time equivalent, but there's a lot of other room in there, and depending on what the various committees of jurisdiction appropriate and authorize, that may make a big difference, sir.
Okay, that's a question I would like to get an answer to. Let me go on to my next question. This is for Ms. Spalding. You were on the commission that recommended this position. Is that correct, Ms. Spalding?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, was there an advocate for civil liberties and privacy on that commission? And if so, why is there not in this proposed legislation? I know you probably didn't write the legislation, but there's 2 deputy directors, but I don't see a deputy director for civil liberties or an advocate for privacy in here. Should there be one, and was that discussed in the commission?
So it's an excellent question, Congressman, and I have a long record of being an advocate for civil liberties and for privacy throughout my career. I think a number of us on the commission came to the table with those sensitivities and those equities very much in mind. There was no specific person designated for that, but a number of us, as I say, brought those sensitivities to the discussions. And I think, certainly privacy is one of the values and interests that cybersecurity is very much intended to protect. So I think in many respects, privacy is very much built into the efforts to strengthen our cybersecurity. But there are times in which the way in which you approach security issues may have implications in other contexts for privacy and civil liberties. And I think your point is very well taken. And I think there ought to be an emphasis. I'm not sure a director specifically for that, but certainly when I was at the Department of Homeland Security as the undersecretary for what is now CISA, I valued very highly having a specific individual and staff focused on privacy and civil liberties issues, as did the department as a whole, and found their input and insights extremely important and valuable.
Well, I'd like to see that, if we create this office, defined legislatively, because there's always seems to be a bias in the other direction. So I think we need an advocate there. Thank you for being one. Mr. Jaffer, what does it mean to have a list of trusted vendors when those vendors are putting backdoors intentionally into their hardware and software? How can you have a secure cyber system in the government when we're actually even sometimes encouraging those vendors to put backdoors in?
No, I think it's an important question that you raise, Congressman Massie. At the end of the day, we have legislation that permits the government to obtain certain access to telecommunication systems, the Communications Systems to Law Enforcement Act. That's typically the way in which law enforcement gets access to telecom systems. Now, if we're talking about other systems, that's a harder question. More often than not, what typically happens with the government is the government will come to a provider with a court order, right? Either from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or from a federal court or a subpoena authorized by Congress to get access. It's not typically happening in a cooperative manner. Typically, it's through some sort of legal process, because the companies have learned that it's important to have that kind of process, so that if they ever if it comes out or they're sued, they have the protection of the law to help protect them. So that's typically how we see it happening. There's usually a judge involved, if not some sort of administrative process that Congress oversees, sir.
Okay. Well, I think there's a little bit of an oxymoron of creating a list of trusted vendors and then asking them to put backdoors in their products. And so I'm concerned about that. My final question is, What's the real responsibility of the government to provide security for a company like Sony, who has over 8 trillion yen in revenue every year? Yeah, Mr. Jeffrey.
Gentlemen,
Yeah.
may answer the question.
Yeah. So it's a great question, Congressman Massie. You know, one of the challenges we have is that today in our country, we expect every company, whether it's the large Sony, the JP Morgan Chase, or the small mom and pop bake shop, we expect every single one of those companies and all that heart of America, the small businesses that run our economy and that are the real engines of innovation, we expect all of them to defend themselves against nation-state threat actors, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, that have virtually unlimited human and monetary resources to throw at this problem. It's an unwinnable battle. We've got to get those companies to come together with one another, create a collective defense structure with multiple industries working with one another. And the government, frankly, takes all this intelligence it collects and provides it back to industry in an actual form to help them defend themselves. If we're going to put them on the front lines, we owe them better, and we're not doing that right now, sir.
Well, if I can interrupt here, I think that there's maybe a misperception being created here. I don't think they're dealing with sophisticated adversaries. Many of these companies are falling victim through simple negligence, through not applying a standard of care with their system. And I think the line of questioning is important, and why I think it's important to have this cyber director position is to balance the equities of law enforcement, where there's proposals, policy proposals to create backdoors and weaken the encryption in commercial products. There's intelligence gain loss decisions that are made on a daily basis. There's law enforcement considerations in creating norms of behavior and international norms of behavior here. And all of these things are being done without having a national policy thought through at the White House level that can balance and consider all of these different equities. It's sort of each department and agency often running on their own in a fairly uncoordinated fashion.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I yield back.